Welcome to this explainer on eUCP version 2.1. Today, we're bridging the gap between traditional documentary credits and those modern, fast-paced digital workflows we're all dealing with. Look, if you're involved in international trade finance, you already know paper is rapidly becoming a thing of the past, right? So today, we're going to unpack exactly how the latest rules from the International Chamber of Commerce actually secure your operations in this new digital era. We all know today's global trade landscape is incredibly interconnected. And let's face it, it's completely reliant on digital networks. But here's the reality check. Technology moves at absolute lightning speed, which means our governing rules absolutely have to keep pace to protect everyone involved. This evolution, it's not just about convenience anymore. It's about establishing rock-solid legal certainty in a network where data literally flies across the globe in milliseconds. Just to put the stakes into perspective, right out of the gate, the ICC's UCP 600 rules serve as the foundation for a staggering $2 trillion in trade transactions every single year. That is a massive number. And the eUCP rules, they're the digital supplement to that massive foundation. So when we talk about updating these rules, we aren't just doing paperwork. We are literally safeguarding the vital arteries of global commerce. So here is our agenda for today. We're going to see exactly how eUCP 2.1 secures and streamlines this massive digital network for your daily operations. We'll hit the digital trade evolution, aligning with the MLETR, vital new definitions, the presentation process, and finally, liability and force majeure. Let's dive in. Section 1, the digital trade evolution, updating the rules for a digital era. Let's start by exploring exactly why the ICC determined these rules needed a refresh right now. The push for version 2.1 actually started pretty recently, kicking off at the October 2022 plenary session in Paris. The ICC Banking Commission recognized that new global legislation had hit the scene, and they needed to act. So their steering committee set up a working group with one very specific goal: align the e-rules with this current global legislation. Their main target? The UN Central Model Law on Electronic Transferable Records, or, thankfully, as we call it for short, MLETR. Moving on to Section 2, aligning with the MLETR, clarifying the scope of version 2.1. This brings us to a really crucial point about what this new version actually means for you, sitting at your desk every day. Okay, you can actually breathe a sigh of relief here. This source material explicitly points out that this was not a fundamental revision or an update of the UCP. It was solely an alignment with MLETR regarding electronic transferable records. That's a huge distinction. The ICC intentionally uses version numbers for their e-rules so they can make these targeted alignments for new legislation without totally upending the broader ICC rules you already know and use. Which brings us to Section 3, vital new definitions, the language of digital trade. To actually process documents confidently under these rules, we've got to master the new vocabulary introduced in Article E3. The absolute most vital addition here is the concept of the electronic transferable record. This is basically the core of the whole MLETR alignment. An electronic transferable record now legally mirrors its paper equivalent. Think about your highly critical negotiable bills of lading or your assignable insurance documents. This rule guarantees that a digital file carries the exact same informational weight as the traditional paper version you used to physically hold in your hands. It's a real game changer. Another essential concept to lock in from Article E3 is data corruption. Because, well, in the digital world, documents don't get torn or coffee stained, they get corrupted. This simply means the electronic record arrives unreadable. It could be the whole file or maybe just a tiny part of it. But if it's unreadable as presented, boom. That falls under data corruption. Let's look at Section 4, the presentation process. Processing electronic records practically. What does this actually look like when you're examining a presentation in the real world? Article E6 lays out a highly structured workflow for this. Step 1, the presenter sends the electronic records to the bank, and remember, they can send these separately, they don't have to batch them all at once. Step 2, and this is the critical part, the presenter provides a notice of completeness. Finally, Step 3, only upon receipt of that specific notice does your official examination period actually begin, starting on the very next banking day. So, the really crucial takeaway here is this. If your data processing system never receives that notice of completeness, legally under Article E6, the presentation is deemed to have never happened at all. Literally. It acts as the ultimate trigger. Without that notice, the clock on your examination period simply does not start ticking. Now, when you're doing the actual examination, Article E7 lays out some fascinating ground rules. First, forwarding an electronic record officially signifies you're satisfied with its apparent authenticity. And take note of this one. If you can't examine a record just because of your own internal format issues, yeah, that is not a valid reason for refusal. Also, hyperlinks to external systems are considered integral parts of the record, meaning if an external system fails to provide access to a link during your review, that officially counts as a discrepancy.
But what happens when things go wrong? Well, Article E8 dictates that if you refuse a presentation and don't get any instructions back from the presenter within 30 calendar days, you've got to take action. You have to return any physical paper documents, sure, but you actually have the right to digitally dispose of those electronic records however you see fit, completely free of any responsibility.
Now, this raises a dramatic but honestly very real question for compliance officers and bank managers out there. We're talking about digital files, external links, and complex data systems. So what happens to your bank's liability if a massive cyber attack completely crashes your processing systems? Or what if a crucial external network just goes dark? That brings us to Section 5, Liability and Force Majeure, protecting your institution. Let's see how Articles E13 and E14 essentially construct a safety net around your bank. Under Article E13, the rules very clearly delineate your boundaries. On your bank's side of the fence, you're only responsible for authenticating what is apparent in the received record through your own systems. You assume absolutely zero liability for the sender's identity or data alteration beyond that apparent authenticity. And on the external side, your bank holds no liability or responsibility whatsoever for the fallout if a data processing system other than your own goes offline. Additionally, the force majeure clause in Article E14 has been brilliantly modernized for the digital age. It still protects your institution from liability due to the traditional stuff like acts of God or terrorism, but now it explicitly adds protections against cyber attacks, software failures, and communication network failures that are beyond your control. If a hack takes down your ability to access a system, the bank assumes no liability for that business interruption. And hey, what if those system issues lead to the data corruption we defined earlier? Article E12 gives you a very clear way out. You just inform the presenter of the corruption and request a representation. The second you do that, your examination time is paused. You just need to notify any confirming or issuing banks about the suspension. If the presenter doesn't fix it within 30 calendar days, you just treat the whole thing as if it was never presented at all. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a critical thought to take back to your teams. The eUCP version 2.1 isn't just some abstract concept. It is an active, vital legal framework built to protect your day-to-day operations in a $2 trillion ecosystem. So, considering the insane volume of global trade rapidly shifting to digital and the ever-present risks of cyber threats, ask yourself, are your current digital workflows fully aligned to leverage these eUCP 2.1 protections today? It's time to take a close look at your processes, demand those notices of completeness, and ensure your internal guidelines match these updated standards. Keep learning, keep adapting, and we'll catch you in the next explainer.